Well, welcome back to Module 5, the rules and regulations concerning financial advisory services. Now we are at Chapter 6 under Paragraph 10. Right, Chapter 6, Paragraph 10, we are at record keeping. Now, in terms of the notice number FAA number 6, the prevention of money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism. This particular notice requires financial advisors and exempt financial advisors to keep record in relation to all transactions relating to this particular topic. And in particular, I draw your attention to paragraph 10.3, which says that at paragraph 10.3a, for CDD information relating to the business relations, as well as account files, business correspondences, and results of any analysis undertaken, the record keeping should be for a period of at least 5 years following the termination of such business. So there is a 5-year requirement for a financial advisor to keep records of. And under paragraph B, for data, documents, information relating to a transaction, including any information needed to explain, and I emphasize the next word there, reconstruct the transaction, a period of at least 5 years following the completion of this transaction. What this means is that when you keep records, these records must be kept in such a way that these records can be produced when required by the authority, i.e. the MAS or the CAD or any relevant authority. In the event that the authorities wish to prosecute a particular person for infringing the Money Laundering Act or the Terrorism Financing Act in Singapore. Right, that's under 10.4. And of course, you can keep these records in any way you want, whether print, electronic, microfiche, whatever. But the key point is that you must be able to produce this evidence when required and in a reasonable time. All right, the manner in which the records are kept must enable the authorities to reconstruct the transactions from day one until the termination of the relationship, the business relationship, or the transaction, as the case may be. So that's in terms of record keeping under the FAA notice number 6. Now coming down to paragraph 11, personal data. Now this is something which is relatively new, the Personal Data Protection Act, and as such that the FAA notice number 6 also require financial advisors to comply with the personal data provisions under the Personal Data Protection Act. All right, paragraph 11 is quite clear, 11.1. Individual person here means a natural person. The personal data, the personal particulars of a natural person, whether living or deceased. That's under the definition at the Personal Data Protection Act. Now here, 11.2, you have to be a bit careful, right? I just read to you, subject to paragraph 11.3, which is below, and for the purpose of complying with this notice. As you will recall, a notice is mandatory. You have to comply with the notice provisions. All right, here it says a financial advisor shall not be required to provide an individual customer, an individual beneficiary of a life insurance policy. Now this relates to life insurance policies, right? An individual appointed to act on behalf of the customer or an individual connected party of a customer or an individual beneficial owner of a customer. All right, bear in mind this in relation to a life insurance policy. All right, so you shall not require, as a financial advisor, you are not required to give access to personal data about the individual that is in the possession or under the control of the financial advisor. Right? B, any information about the ways which the personal data of the individual under paragraph A above has been or may have been used or disclosed by the financial advisor. Now, life insurance policies are essentially confidential, right? Relates to beneficiaries, relates to the customer. So under A, access. Number B, in the ways in which the personal data has been used or disclosed, and any right to correct an error or omission of the personal data about the individual that is in the possession or under the control of the financial advisor. Right? So for those three things, there's no need for you as a financial advisor to comply. But 11.2 A, B, and C must be read subject to 11.3. Right? So in terms of 11.3, a financial advisor shall, as soon as reasonably practical. Now that's under the PDPA as well. Upon the request of any person, individual customer, the relevant person, individual customer, individual appointed to act on the customer, individual connected party of the customer, or individual beneficial owner of the customer. All right? If any one of these asks you for access to the information, provide the requesting individual, right, with the right to access the following types of personal data of that individual that is in the possession or under the control of the financial advisor. So A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, now those information you have to allow access, right? In other words, just the full name, including any alias, unique identification number, residential address, date of birth, nationality, and so on. All right, so all these you need to disclose, right? These are all personal data, personal particulars of the requesting individual. All right, so, and of course, there's a qualification there under B, subject to paragraph section 22(7), read with the 6th schedule of the Personal Data Protection Act. Within that particular section of the PDPA, correct any error or omission in relation to the data as mentioned above, 1, 2, 6, right? So if the name is wrong, or the number is wrong, or there's a change in address, or there's an error on the date of birth, or the nationality, that is subject to change. And there's also a qualification there. There are reasonable grounds for such a request, right? So it's not like, as long as they make a request, then the financial advisor is expected to allow them to access and correct, right? There must be reasonable grounds for doing so, all right? So the PDPA is another piece of legislation that financial advisor representatives or the financial advisor itself has to take note of, right? Because any breach of the personal data provision will attract penalties. And I'm sure some of you may have heard of some big insurance companies in Singapore that have been taken to task, right, for breach of the Personal Data Protection Act, right? So, and of course, the Personal Data Commission, that is the authority that administers this particular act, right? They have the power to fine insurance companies up to $1 million, right? So, if you look at the cases decided by the Personal Data Commission, then you've seen some of the bigger companies insurance companies in Singapore, right? They have been taken to task, right? When they accidentally breach the Personal Data Protection Act. Okay, so that's in terms of personal data in relation to the topic of the prevention of money laundering and the countering the financing of terrorism in Singapore. Now let's come to the paragraph 12 below, suspicious transaction reporting. Right, 12.1 reminds you that you should keep in mind the provision of the CDSA. Right, what is CDSA? We have talked about that earlier. This is the Corruption, Drug Trafficking and Serious Offences Act. Right, we will come to this a bit in greater detail a while later under the guidelines for this particular topic, right? And not only are you concerned with CDSA, you also have to be concerned with the TSOFA. And what is the TSOFA? Right? So TSOFA is the Terrorism Suppression of Financing Act, right? So this is a suppression of terrorism financing, right? And these two particular acts actually in conjunction in relation to the FAA Notice Number 6 provide for reporting to the authorities of any suspicious transactions that you come across, right, to the relevant authority. Right, now let's move a little bit more into this thing. So under A, it says establish a single reference point within the organization to whom employees, representatives, and officers are instructed to promptly refer. Right? All transactions suspected of being connected with money laundering or terrorism financing, for possible referral to STRO via STR. Now again, what are these acronyms? Can you remember? Right? In the definition section, I've already pointed out to you. So STRO is a Suspicious Transaction Reporting Office. This is part of the police department. It's in Cantonment Road. All right, or via the STRs. STRs are the Suspicious Transaction Reports. So the Financial Crime Department, the arm of the Financial Crime Department of the CAD, the Commercial Affairs Division, under the Singapore Police Force, well, they are given the task, right, to receive all the suspicious transaction reports from financial advisors, and thereon they will do the necessary investigations into the reports which financial advisors have filed in. Right, so there's the STR report, the Suspicious Transaction Report, that is required to be filed with the Suspicious Transaction Reporting Office and a copy to the MAS. Right? And keep records of all transactions referred to STRO, together with all internal findings and analysis done in relation to them. Right? So if you face with a suspicious transaction from a staff or from an employee, from a representative, then this has been referred to a single reference point, meaning to say the financial advisor must have a particular unit, right, as it were, to receive such reports. Right? So as generally speaking, this unit will be with the Legal and Compliance Department of the financial advisor. It is a specific dedicated unit, just one reference point. Right? So all the suspicious transaction will be forwarded to this particular unit, and this unit must be well staffed and with people who are suitably qualified and with the relevant experience. So they will do the analysis, and whether or not the report need to be made to STRO will have to be referred to the senior management. Right? The senior management will take a look at the analysis, take a look at the findings, and take a look at the recommendation of this particular reference point, right? And then decide whether to make the report to STRO. So if senior management should decide not to make the report, the relevant report, then the senior management must document and put on record why a suspicious transaction report should not be made to STRO. So the ball actually is in the court of senior management, whether to report or not to report. Right? And I repeat it again, if management decides not to report, then reasons must be given and reasons must be documented accordingly. Okay? So 12.2 says clearly, shall promptly submit reports, right, including attempted transactions. Even though the transactions did not go through, even if you say, no, we cannot do this particular transactions, and if the financial advisor should suspect that these are within quotes as suspicious transactions, which we will discuss a bit later, a bit more of the suspicious transaction later, regardless of the amount of the transaction, right? Right? There's no limit as to the amount of transaction. Even it's a $100 transaction or a $1,000 transaction, or even a $1 transaction for that matter. All right. So if the financial advisor does suspect that whatever transaction is suspicious, then you need to make a report and to extend a copy of this particular report for the information of the MAS. So 12.3, financial advisor shall consider if the circumstances are suspicious. Now this is a judgment call. All right, that's why they put the responsibility on the senior management to decide whether to warrant the filing of an STR. Right, that's the word they use, whether to warrant. All right, warrant, that means whether it is justified or makes sense to file the report, and document the basis for its determination, including the financial advisor is for any reason unable to complete the measures as required by paragraph 6, 7, and 8. Now, I'm not sure whether you can remember what are the provisions stated under paragraph 6, 7, or 8. Just to remind you, 6 refers to the customer due diligence. Paragraph 7 refers to the simplified customer due diligence. And paragraph 8 refers to the enhanced customer due diligence. So while we are going through this particular notice, FAA number 6 on money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism, it bears in mind to look at these 3 paragraphs. Right, paragraph 6, 7, and 8. They are all related to customer due diligence. Right? So if the financial advisor, for whatever reason, unable to complete the customer due diligence measures as required, then it may warrant a filing of the suspicious transaction report. Or B, the customer is reluctant. Right? When you ask questions, when you probe, then the customer is not willing, unable to provide information that you ask for, and then decides to withdraw the pending application. They say, okay, you asked too many questions. I don't think I want to continue business relationship with you. I do not want to establish a business relation with you, or I want to terminate the business relations because you're too inquisitive. You ask too many questions, all right? So if that be the case, then the senior management will have to consider whether such events warrant filing a suspicious transaction report, the STR. Now, 12.4 is something new. If you look at the bottom, the subscript point there, please note, in particular, section 48 of the CDSA on tipping off, right? The small note there under 3 in that particular box. Now, let me read to you again 12.4 very quickly before I explain. When a financial advisor forms a suspicion of money laundering or terrorism financing and reasonably believes that performing any of the measures as required under paragraph 6, 7, and 8 will tip off, underline, will tip off a customer. So while you're performing customer due diligence or simplify customer due diligence or enhance customer due diligence, and in the process, from your perspective, you believe that this natural person before you or the person appointed to act on behalf of the customer or connected party or the beneficial owner of the party, right? And you have this issue or this suspicion that you will tip off the customer, then be careful of this. I just emphasize the financial advisor may stop performing these measures. All right, in the process while you're asking questions and probing, asking for data and further information in your duty to do the customer due diligence exercise, then in the process, if you feel that it will tip off the customer, all right, the customer suddenly find that, hey, you're asking too many questions and you're tipping off somebody, then you have to stop performing, right? The financial advisor then shall document the basis for his assessment and file the STR. Now, tipping off under the CDSA is a serious offense. All right, and if I recall, there is a penalty for tipping off, which is I think $30,000 upon conviction, right? So similarly, if anyone were to tip off a particular customer or a person appointed on behalf of the customer or the connected party or the beneficial owner, all right, of any suspicious transaction report or things like that. And if the customer should disappear from the surface of this planet, all right, in order to avoid being arrested or being prosecuted, then the party that does the tipping off, meaning to say warning the other party, then an offense may have been committed. Right? And upon conviction, as I said, if I recall correctly, the fine is up to a maximum of $30,000. And also there is a jail term, I believe. Yeah, there is a jail term. Okay, so you refer to section 48 of the CDSA on tipping off, you will find the penalties there. Right? There's a fine and or a jail term. Okay, that's in terms of the notice in relation to suspicious transaction reporting. So later on, we will go into the details in the guidelines on this particular topic. Right, quickly then moving to paragraph 13. Paragraph 13 provides for internal policies, compliance, audit, and training. So below at the box there, 13.1 and 13.2, it talks about the financial advisor developing and implementing adequate internal policies, procedures, and controls, taking into consideration its money laundering and terrorism financing risks, right? So the two key risks are money laundering and terrorism financing in this topic. Right? In relation to the size of the business, the nature of the business, the type of products and services, the type of technologies that the financial advisor is using, in order to help prevent money laundering and terrorism financing. And more importantly, to communicate this to all employees in the company. So everybody has a part to play to prevent money laundering and the financing of terrorist activities. And as you will see later on in the guidelines, the guidelines on anti-money laundering and anti-terrorism financing give you all the details, right? Now then, at paragraph 13.3, it talks about group policies. Right? Now, subject to paragraph 13.4 to 13.9 below, a reference to the financial advisor means a financial advisor incorporated in Singapore. All right, subject to the paragraphs 13.4, 13.9. Now, here we are talking about a group policy. All right, so if a company has subsidiaries or branches, okay, in a host country or jurisdiction, right? So therefore, you need to have a group policy. Whether you have branches overseas or branches or subsidiaries overseas or other companies have branches in Singapore or subsidiaries in Singapore. All right. So in relation to group policies, right? So you need to develop a group policy on the AML CFT to meet all requirements of this notice and extend this to all of its branches and subsidiaries in its financial group. Now that's the key, right? Extend this group policy to all of its branches and subsidiaries in its financial group. All right, so where financial advisor has a branch or subsidiary in a host country or jurisdiction, one, in relation to which FATF has called for countermeasures. This we have spoken earlier. FATF has blacklisted or put up warnings against certain countries, or known to have inadequate AML CFT measures as determined by the financial advisor for itself. Right? So you can rely on FATF, you can rely on other caution statements or warnings from relevant authorities or relevant sources. You also have to rely on yourself, right, to be able to be in the know as to which countries, which jurisdictions where the AML CFT measures are not adequate. Right? So if that be the case, then the financial advisor shall ensure that its group policy is strictly observed by the management of that branch or subsidiary. Right? This is to make sure that there is consistency insofar as Singapore companies are concerned, financial companies are concerned, in relation to its group policy, having branches or subsidiaries in other countries. 13.6, I just again read to you quickly. Subject to the financial advisor putting in place adequate safeguards to protect the confidentiality and the use of any information that is shared. Right? The financial advisor shall develop and implement group policies and procedures as branches and subsidiaries within the group to share information required for the purposes of CDD and for AML and CFT. All right, in terms of identifying and mitigating the financial risks. Right? Now here, the MAS actually give a qualification. You have to also to protect the confidentiality. Right? So most of these transactions are confidential and subject to the privacy policies, not the Personal Data Protection Act. So while you are sharing this information, the financial advisor needs to be concerned with what type of information you are sharing. And if it's in relation to money laundering and suppressing of financial terrorism, the financing of terrorism financing, then that's fine. All right, like they make it very clear to the extent permitted by the law of the countries or jurisdictions as branches and subsidiaries are in. So you must have connaissance of or be aware of the laws and regulations in those countries, in those jurisdictions. Yeah? Now, then 13.7 says, such policies and procedures shall include the provision to the financial advisor's group level. I repeat that, I underline that, group level compliance unit. All right? And the AML CFT functions of customer account, transaction information from the branches and subsidiaries within the financial group, and when necessary for money laundering and terrorism financing risk management purposes. Right? Only for those purposes that you have to be concerned with in relation to sharing information.